Right, so I'm coming back to finishing this piece. I started it in my group. The group is Many Hands Create and Inspire, and in the group I was chit-chatting away and didn't get finished, and a few ladies asked if I could actually show the finishing of this box. So I'm going to continue doing this box here with you guys in this video so that you can see the finishes. So just recap that it's a little kind of mail slot holder. It has a little kind of nook in the back, and we're going to be decoupaging. But before we do, I'm building up some different textures of paint. So I'm dabbing the paint on. I started with sheepskin chalk paint, sheepskin colour being an off like a creamy white. Then I did a little bit of bronze. Then I did oatmeal chalk paint, and then we're going to go back on and do the top layer of another layer of the sheepskin. And I'm just using a stencil brush to do this, just because I find that for the dabbing motion the stencil brush is pretty perfect for that. So I'm just going to get quite a bit onto my brush and then just use the lid here and just dab some off. And then, as you can see here, I'm just dabbing it back over what I've done, and I don't want to totally cover, but I want to cover well. And then the colours underneath are just going to be giving texture, definition, so it's just not a flat colour. And then when I decoupage over, there'll be some movement to hide a little bit of the edges of the paper, because it'll be all kinds of different colours underneath, rather than it being a flat colour and you'll see an obvious line of the decoupage. So I'm just going over what I've already done, and then just, as I say, I just want a little bit of the colour underneath to pop through, not a lot. And then just keep going around doing the sides with this. This is sheepskin chalk paint. So I'm just going to finish this side here. And then we'll get on to doing the actual decoupage, which is what a lot of my friends on my group and on my page wanted to see. So that's what I'm going to be showing you here on YouTube, is the actual decoupage side of it. So got a lot of the sunlight showing through, but that's kind of where I'm going with this. I'm going to be doing all the insides everywhere. You don't need to watch me do the whole thing, but that's the basics of where I'm going with this. And the tops. And the front bit here. A bit more paint on the lid. Dries up very quickly because it is chalk paint. Alright, so I'm just going to do the insides and then I will get back to you with the decoupage. So with the decoupage, I'm going to do the sides first, for the main reason that's the biggest part of this. So I'm going to just trace a line, just draw a quick line around where I need to cut this paper. I will be tearing it to get a nice softer edge in the end, but I just want a guideline of where I need to be on this. So alright, that was quite the guideline there, but that's okay. I'm just going to cut that out if I can find, I'll try these scissors, and just going to cut it a little bit on the outside of the line, just because I will be ripping this, and I do want this one to be kind of covering most of the side. So time I rip, I would lose some of it. this is what we're going to end up with here. And as I say, I'm going to be ripping it a little bit just to get that softer edge for the decoupage. Now the ripping is a lot easier if you use a little bit of water on the edges of your paper. So I've just got quite a stiff brush, and I'm just going to literally put the edges where I'm going to rip almost into the water, and just making sure I get it really wet. And try and get both sides, because this is kind of a little bit of a waxy paper, so I want to get both sides. And the bottom part that's straight I am going to leave. I think I'll have that's fine. So I have these edges a little bit wet, and I'm just going to rip down where the wetness is, just for a little bit more of a grungy kind of vintage distressed look on this. And then I'll just put it onto the side, see what I think, and go from there. So it's hard for you guys to see because I've got sun popping on, but let's see what it looks like. I think I'm going to end up a little bit more, so I'm just going to rip a little bit more, see if it's wet enough for me to rip a little bit more. No, I'm going to wet it just a little bit more and go down just a tiny bit, a tad bit more. So just wet the edges. Some people actually, they use like a fire or like a lighter, I'm not sure, and they burn the edges, and that always looks good too. If you've got a white kind of paper, you could, instead of using just water, you could use tea or instant coffee mix and wet it with that, and then your edges would have that brown kind of edging. But this is a darker kind of colour anyway on this paper, so it wouldn't really show. So let's see what I've got going on here. That's a little better. I'm just going to dab. I've got quite the stiffness here and it looks too perfect, so I'm going to actually rip onto there a little bit, just to give it a little bit of, so it doesn't look like I'm ripping a perfect edge, you know. When it's ripped, you still don't want it to be perfect. So this is what I've got going on here, and I'm going to be putting this onto this part. So let's put it up, and we're going to use Mod Podge on this. Let's see if I can find a nice brush to do it with. This one will be good. And I have a bag ready, and I'll show you what the bag is for. And my Mod Podge here, so I'll put it on this side so it doesn't block your view. Now this is a thicker paper, so it may take a little bit to press down, but you're going to cover the whole side. And the reason I'm doing the whole side, even though it doesn't cover the whole side, because then it acts as a clear coat for the paint as well. So put it liberally on, not too thick, but making sure you've covered the whole surface. And then let it just fall into place onto your piece of paper, on your piece. Making sure your corners is the main thing to get, and that's what I'm struggling with here, just getting it perfectly. I want it perfectly in the corner, but not too much over, because or else that would eventually rub off over time. So you don't want it to go over the corner. So you've got it on, dropped on. Now this is when you use the bag. Anything kind of clear, kind of shiny plastic or anything, I just use a bag because I have lots of them around, and I press down. And this prevents your fingers pulling back up on the paper, because your fingers would stick to the glue, then stick to the paper, and it would maybe pull it back off. And it has done with me many times when I've not used the bag. So this way it doesn't stick to the glue, and you get that perfect image transfer. And then you can go back on. I had one tiny crease, so I went back in with my finger with the bag and just pushed down on the crease. And as it dries, you may have a couple more creases pop up, and just as it's drying, just push down and it'll come up nicely. So there's the first side, and I'm going to continue to do the other sides the same, and then we'll do the inside. Now I'm going to be doing the insides, and the first one I'm going to be using is this. It looks a bit like an old-fashioned letter, and it fits in perfectly. I just have to kind of, cut the top part. So I'm just going to get my pencil and just do a guidance line of where I need to cut, and then I will do that and decoupage it on. And I'm going to, on the second one, do this one. It's got a cute little typewriter that I'm going to do it down here, and I'm going to just basically, I can see where the line is to cut on this one because it was literally just where it said this is, so I'm going to just cut that. Now these, I think I'm going to leave it as cut lines, well, especially on this one, because I think it'll blend in nicely in here, and just as is. So that's going to kind of go in there like that, as is. And then this top one, let's see, let's cut it, and always keep your scrap pieces. It's always good to do kind of a collage type decoupage on different pieces of any pieces you have left over. That's always fun to do. And that one, yes, I'm going to stick in there. So I just need another bag that I can reach. Get that ready. You can use the same bag many times, put it inside out, outside in, that kind of thing. So I'm just going to put plenty of the Mod Podge in here, and then try and line it up nicely. It's going to be a little bit awkward because it is inside here, but hopefully I don't get too many creases and it'll be not much to have to play with. So let's see what I can get here. So I've got it inside, move this one out the way, and I'm just going to tip it so I can actually see this, to get my fingers in here and press it down. And that goes in nicely. Just got to put, I think, a tiny little bit of Mod Podge up here, just so. And I have it, I guess my cutting skills wasn't perfect, so I have it a little bit over. So I'm just going to wait for that to dry, and then I'll just use a little bit of sandpaper just to sand off that actual top edge. I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm going to put lots of the Mod Podge on and then stick it in there. Making sure this one, because it's got a picture on it, I've got to make sure it is up the right way. And it's just a little bit sitting at an angle, so I'll just kind of move it a little bit, and then I'm just going to use the bag. I need to kind of put it so I can see it, and just push down. And I'm finding this paper is not creasing it hardly at all. It's really nice paper to work with, so I'm not having any problems with this. So that's what we've got going on, and I'm going to leave those to dry. This part I will sand it down just a little bit because it has got an edge, and then we will do the next part. So just let everything, now you've decoupaged all the sides and everywhere you want decoupaged, then just leave it all just to dry completely. When it's all dry, then go back over with the Mod Podge to give a clear coat on the top. We'll do that next. Alright, it seems to be dry in all the right places. I did a little bit more of decoupage on the back, and the sides are all done. The inside is done, and now we're going to do some finishings. Just going to try and open up the back here. It's still got to kind of work on just sanding off some of the edges so the back opens nicely, but there we've got going on in the back. So I did some stripes underneath and then some flowers just for something different. So I'm going to work on the outside, and I've decided I'm going to go with a glaze. So I may have to put on top of the glaze some wax, dark wax or black wax, but I want to go with a glaze first. So this is the one I've chosen. But before I do that, I'm going to use, this is a permanent ink on an ink pad, and I'm going to use the actual pad, and I'm just going to go around all the edges, any edges I have with the ink pad, to just give a little, this is a stone grey colour, just a little definition of the edges of the piece. It's a permanent ink, and what this does is, it's not black, it's a grey, it's a dark grey, just gives a subtle darkness under the glaze. So it'll give a depth, a little extra depth to the glaze. So I'm just pushing it onto just all the edges, inside and outside, and on the tops too. Just trying to get it in there, right on the edges, and again on the edge here I want to push all the way onto the edges, right on there, corners very much so, and on the same side, on this side too, the same thing, corners. And this, just as I say, just gives a little depth underneath, hair in there, underneath the glaze. So I'm going to now let that dry, and let the permanent ink dry. It needs to be completely dry before I can put the glaze on, or else the glaze would just push it back off. So we'll do the glazing next. Alright, so we're just doing the glaze, and I'm going to just put some little bit of the glaze onto my brush and just tap it back off onto the lid, just tapping it back off onto the lid, and then I'm just going to go around the edges. Any edges, just stippling it on, and any corners, just pushing it on to give it an aged look. And then with a dry cloth, just press it in and soften your lines. If you find you have way too much, you can use a wet cloth and do the same thing. And just subtly go to any corners, even on the inside. We're just going in any corners and just stippling around, and then with a dry, I'm using an old tea towel, but a dry lint-free cloth, just pat it dry. And it gives the paper an aged look. It hides the paper decoupaging onto the wood, onto the paint, and it gives an aged look of the whole thing. So just along here, we're just going to stipple on just a little bit along the top to give it an aged look. Around the corner, it's a little bit heavier, and then just push it back a little bit by tapping, just smudging a little with a lint-free dry cloth. And again, along this edge. And just so that it doesn't look too finished, just bring it in into the paper just a little bit. Just go in a little lighter as you go in, and then make sure you go back with your dry cloth and dab. Brings it back down. If you find anywhere it's too hard, too much, go in with a wet cloth and just pat over those edges and it'll bring it back up. And anywhere that you think is just a little too heavy. So let's see if we've got everywhere, check everywhere. We've got all the sides and the back. With the back, make sure you're going, because we've got lots of different lines of weather paper, make sure you go in everywhere with that. And then just, before you finish, just bring it all back with a little bit of a damp cloth, just highlighting some of it, and then just back over again, lightly. Layering it always gives more depth than just doing it once. Anywhere you see too much light colour, white or creams, just go in with the glaze. And as I say, just keep checking. And then the sides here, I'm just going to go in. Let's see if I can show you. The side here is a little too boring, so I'm just going to go in again and around. Just softly giving it some more, just in the sides along this edge. And just checking everywhere. And again on this side here, just going to give it a little bit more, bringing it in. And I think, oh, no, I need to do a little more in here too. It's just a little too perfect lines. So just get some on my brush. And what I'm doing actually is, let's see if I can show you, in here. Just going back in here with very little on my brush, but just going more down onto the wood so it's not just a perfect line. And then the last in here was just a little too perfect too. Just going back over, just adding a little bit of the glaze into the middle, so it's not too much of just a perfect line. Even though you're stippling, you don't want it to look like the perfect stippling line. Push in just to soften with your dry cloth, and if you find any of it's a little too dark anywhere, go in with your wet cloth. And we are almost done. I'm just going to put a little up here because it didn't look as I wanted it. I had to just pull it back a bit. And I think I'm done. You know, if I do any more, it would just be too much. I will be painting the bottom in the end, but I always do that last when everything's completely dry, sealed and everything else. So I'm just going to go over with a poly sealer and we are going to paint it up. So here's the back and the sides and the inside. And then next we are going to just do the inside of here. Still got to kind of sand that down a little bit, but what I'm going to do inside here is, if I can reach it, I'm going to go in with some white wax. I don't have a lot left, but I think it will be perfect in here. So just find a brush. This one's good. Just a brush like that. I don't have a lot of white wax left, so I just got to scrape it out because I do have to get more, but I don't need a lot anyway. But I'm just going to basically go over the whole inside with the white wax, just to give it some interest on the corners, and just a different look than the outside, a little bit more brighter, lighter. So just going over any edges that you have from the paper, any creases you have in the box, any lines, and just go along with the white wax. We're doing the same thing as really we did with the glaze, but just going in with the white wax. Again, I'm going to go back in with a lint-free cloth and just make sure I push down and just subtle pat it dry, just to give it a little bit of softness. And then I think the inside is looking good. I don't want to do too much in there. I don't want it darkened. I just want it to be a little bit of fun, a little bit of brightness in there. I'm just going to add a little bit of the glaze on the end here, just so it matches and draws and brings it in. And as I say, it's still a little sticky from glaze, glue and everything else, so the closing of it is a little bit still sticky, but once it gets completely dry, it'll open and close really easy. So I'm just going to leave that to dry, and I will then do some pictures and stage it and put it some nice pictures at the end of this video of it staged and in place and how I think it should be. If you enjoyed this video, please give it the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. That would be awesome. Again, this box I started in my group, and the group is Many Hands Create and Inspire. It's a group for everyone. I started this project while I was chit-chatting to people, and that's what I did in the group, and the group were asking if I could finish what I did for the details of this box on a video, so that's why I'm doing this right now. It's finished. I'll stage it up, do some pictures at the end of this video. There'll be some pictures of the box staged nicely. So I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned, and I hope you're inspired, and please pass on the inspiration to others. And thanks for watching. I'm Julie from Julie's Everything Treasures. As I say, thumbs up, please subscribe to my channel and tell all your friends. Have a great day. Thank you.